We're about to begin, so if you could take your seats, that would be wonderful. My name is Masha Vinod, and I'm the chairperson of the Malden River Works Steering Committee. Welcome to our second public meeting of Malden River Works for waterfront equity and resilience. If you didn't make it to our first public meeting last October, you are welcome to our second meeting. If you were in attendance for our first meeting, welcome back, and thank you all for connecting with us in this project. It belongs to all of us. We wish to acknowledge and thank all our government officials present this evening. Please know we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this meeting. We also acknowledge those of you who are here this evening from various Malden communities, parents, students, religious leaders, the curious, and even the skeptics. We applaud you and thank all of you for your presence and your participation this evening. This project is very much about you and what you want to see for a public access park along the Malden River. This evening, we continue to the process of listening and collaborative consensus building that is fundamental to an equitable process. We are continuing the conversation we began in October with you, our neighbors. We heard what you had to say at the first meeting and in the surveys you completed. The great news is that you, Malden residents, filled out 497 surveys. Congratulations. We are grateful for your enthusiastic participation. Approximately half of the surveys have been processed to date, and information has been used to start designing different types of green space. You will hear back the results of your input and continue with new input this evening and next steps in this transformational process. I want to share with you a quote from a Kenyan environmental activist and the first African woman to win a Nobel Peace Prize, Wangari Maathai. She said, "Today we are faced with a challenge that calls for a shift in our thinking so that humanity stops threatening its life support system. We are called to assist the earth to heal her wounds and in the process heal ourselves. Indeed, to embrace the whole of creation in all its diversity, beauty, and wonder, recognizing that sustainable development, democracy, and peace are indivisible, is an idea whose time has come." We have a great program for you this evening, a gifted speaker and poet, as well as time for your input into what you want to see. We haven't scheduled any breaks in tonight's program, however, please feel free to tend to your own break needs. There is water available at the back table and this table up here in front. There are snacks on each table. So back there's a red tablecloth, and there are activities for children in the back. So relax and enjoy our community meeting. I thank you.
Thank you, Marsha. My name is Kathy Bamper, and I'm the project lead for Malden River Works. And I first would like to explain why we have a videographer here from Malden River Works. They're very interested in videoing our process. And I'm saying the word process because, not just project, because we're really involved in a process of which would be great to document. We're forging new partnerships, including communities, groups, youth, government officials, and also environmentalists to increase public access to the Malden River. So while we're building a park, we're actually building and forging new partnerships. And for that, we are really looking forward to creating more social equity and climate resiliency for the city of Malden. And I think other cities might be interested in our process as well, so that's the reason why we're making the video, is so that we can share it with other groups that may be interested. So let's begin. I'm curious about who is all here tonight. So let's do this. I'm about ready to ask you to make a show of hands, okay? So, are you ready? Okay. So raise your hand and hold it up if you were here last October for the very first kickoff of the Malden Riverworks public meeting. So let's see a show of hands. Wow, that's extraordinary. It looks about half of us. Terrific. Congratulations, you're our sustainer group already. So we're really happy to see you again. And now I'd like, obviously, to go for the next group. So I'd like you to raise your hand now if you're attending for your first Malden Riverworks public meeting today. Wow, okay, thank you so much. So we have about half and half. That's really of interest to all of us. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start also by giving a brief overview and introduction, and then we'll get into more details. What's interesting is a lot of people in Malden haven't seen the river themselves, and it was wonderful to have as many people come up to the first meeting as they did, even though they might not have even seen the river. So I'm just going to show a few slides to acquaint you with the site and a few other details about the river. So where is the Malden River? And I understand why it's so hard to find, because if you're going from here down to, I'm going to point over here, see it easier, down Commercial Avenue, you'll see that you'll get to the DPW site at 356 Commercial Avenue. Now, where is the Department of Works? That's it right there at 356 Commercial Avenue, Commercial Street. Next slide. So we're having stereo right here. Taking me a little while to get used to it. Okay, so the reason why you can't see the river very well, you can tell from this close-up view, is because there's so many buildings right alongside the river and so many different parking lots all along the river. So the one place where you can see the Malden River from the road actually is Medford Street Bridge. Next slide. And this is a view actually from the bridge looking north, and you can see there's a small strip of green along both sides, but mostly it is parking lot next to the river. Zooming in now on the DPW site, you can see that Commercial Street is on the left and Malden River is on the right. There's a very large building that's filled with many, many big trucks and big equipment, and a big yard necessary for all that work. And also you can see the star on the boat house. If you're not familiar with this, this is where the Malden High School actually has its rowing team. Next slide. And here is a view from the riverbank at the DPW site. It's beautiful. Now I'm just going to do a quick overview of the concept design and our outreach process. So the goal for this meeting, public meeting number 2, is to actually get feedback on concept designs. We're in public meeting number 2, and I want to let you know we're looking forward to having 2 more public meetings. The third one, is scheduled for April, and there'll be one later on. And we're working towards a concept design report, which in the long run will allow us to work towards a shovel-ready design in the fall, summer and fall of 2020. So during this time period, we're really going to look forward, if you're looking forward to see lots of different events along the river, we're asking you to stay tuned through our media. So Malden Riverworks is a new website, and the Mystic River Watershed Association has the second one there, which also includes Malden River as well. And then very reliable is, of course, the Friends of the Malden River, which has a Facebook. So I'd just like to introduce you to the people who worked hard to win the prize, which is from the Leventhal Center for the Leventhal Center for Advanced Urbanism. So here we are, a picture of the prize team, actually inside the DPW site. You can see how big the vehicles are. And I'd like to just show you the names of the people. So there's Marie Law Adams. She's the design lead. Karen Buck is our environmentalist. Gary Christensen, who's here also, is our ex officio and gave a wonderful part of our presentation to the prize team. We actually had to go up as in a contest and make presentations at this point with other competitors. It was very exciting. And then there's Amber Christopherson from the Mystic River Watershed Association, and Masha, who you already know, who's our wonderful lead for the steering committee. She's the chair. Evan Spatrini is the advocate for the city. And then myself also, I work at MIT at the Center for Environmental Health Sciences, so I'm very interested in having a healthy river too. So that concludes my part of the time up here, and we are going to move next to hearing from the next person.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to introduce our steering committee members that are here this evening. So I'd just ask you to stand when I call your name, and you can applaud when I've got all of you up. Suada Q, and she's also, people don't like her. Karen Buck is also one of our steering committee members. Laura. Evans Petrini, Councilor Barbara Murphy, Ramon Morales, Bobby Knox from the DPW, and Khalil Khalil. Thank you. That's our steering committee. And I'm very happy to have them all here. We have a couple of steering committee members that couldn't make this evening, but they're here with us in thought. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our guest speaker this evening, Terry Carter. He's a gifted writer and speaker. He was born and raised in Medford and educated in the Medford Public Schools. He is also a classically trained poet whose literary influences range from Shakespeare to the Harlem Renaissance. Terry is a husband, a father, an ordained minister, and he directs the elder services at the historic West Medford Community Center. Terry enjoys taking contemporary life and faith experiences and translating them into word pictures that engage people in a truly unique way. He has published 4 volumes of inspired poetry, including his most recent book, Brown Skin and the Burden of Proof, A Poet's Revelation, which was released in the fall of 2018. He is currently hard at work on a 5th volume of the Brown Skin verse. And tonight we welcome Terry to our 2nd Malden River Works public meeting as our guest speaker. Terry. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. First, thanks to Karen Buck, Marsha Vinod, and Kathleen Vanderberg for their invitation and for their welcoming spirit. I'm really humbled by the thought that what I do has value at times like these in front of people with big hearts, clear vision, and good intentions. Clearly, we are in great need for all of these things at this time in our kindred history. I come to you as a neighbor this evening and as a product of the river's edge. I was born and raised just a stone's throw away from the Mystic River in the nearby city of Medford. And as you know, we've always had a love-hate relationship with the city of Malden. We've always had the annual Turkey Day football game, one of the oldest high school matchups in the country, and definitely one with bragging rights attached. But beyond this competitive spirit, we're both blue-collar cities of industry where a strong work ethic and a will to do better has always been part of the fabric of our communities, be they black, white, or brown. And though I live on the South Shore of Boston today, I will always consider Medford, particularly West Medford, my home. My faith, my values, and my life philosophy has been formed in great measure by the unique Mystic River landscape with all of its bends, twists, and turns. I don't have an awful lot of time to talk with you today, so please forgive me if I dispense with any additional pleasantries and launch right into what I came to say. I want to speak with you briefly on what I've come to recognize about the neighborhood I come from and what it means to be a product of the river. It's probably not what you think it would be, but it frames what I believe about how important it is to establish, cherish, and empower communities of like-minded people. Hard by the Mystic. They gave my people the lowlands, and not much of it. Just a few streets hard by the river. Banks turned a blind eye behind the red lines, and it wasn't about the money. Class was an irresistible force. Race was an immovable object. Perhaps it wasn't the written rule, but white folks knew the legal too to keep us in our place in this Mystic Valley space, where slaves and rum and ships had built some mansions, made some millionaires, and hid some old money. So it was hard by the Mystic we went, muddy and a bit turned down. The only place where one could be brown in this ancient Middlesex County town. But we named it, we claimed it, and made it our own. Even in the heat of summer, when the shores were parched and the soil was rank with the decay of aquatic alchemy, we were one with the river. We followed its flow to the lakes and the sandy beachfront. Like our own Jordan Shore, we baptized and blessed our brothers and sisters in Christ. We caught the little fishes to go with our loaves of bread and became the teeming multitude who our Lord Jesus fed hard by the Mystic. We became community. We commanded unity. We embraced the village and raised up our children in the way they should go. As the river ebbs and flows, the tides return and our fortunes grow. A few more streets become our home. Houses on Sharon and kin on Jerome. From Duggar Park to the railroad tracks, the landed folk make more room for blacks. The color line recedes a bit. Church and school in the center sit. The ville becomes the heart of it, hard by these Mystic shores. Now the worm has surely turned, and folks who left have surely learned things couldn't stay the same. The muddy Mystic most days is clean. The banks are freshly cut and green. Faces once distinctly brown are not the only ones in town. The streets that once were our confines must now embrace what gentry defines: condominium culture, bedroom convenience, university sprawl, access, egress, excess, and largesse. Now those lowlands have become the highlights of a trending city, and sometimes that success isn't pretty when it's at the expense of your black and brown and tan family. And yet, the river still turns and bends from where it begins to where it ends. The only place where one could be brown in this ancient Middlesex County town, where we named it and claimed it and made it our own. You see, sometimes it's not about the challenges you face, it's about how you face those challenges. And that's why I'm excited to be speaking with you this evening. The geography of the Malden River is indeed challenging. It has been somewhat neglected and somewhat unprotected for a very long time. But that's where a turned down environment can be turned up by a community of like-minded people. You are the new generation that establishes, that cherishes, and that empowers. You're here because you know it's not about the challenges you face, it's about the way you face the challenge. You are the ones that can name it and claim it and make it your own. With your help, the Malden River waterfront can become a park for public enjoyment and recreation. Together, your efforts will serve to improve the river's wildlife habitat and the city of Malden's flood resiliency. From the outside looking in, here's what I see. These Malden River's waters have their flow. Into the greater Mystic they go. Once salty marshes and tidal flats mark the river's habitats. Flanked by Medford and Everett too, the blueback herring were more than few. All who keep the river's lore still long for simple days of yore. In time, the industries would come. With chemical leaks and toxic scum, they left a mark that haunts us still, from metal refining to textile mill. History isn't always kind to the natural beauty it may find, so restoration lies with those who move to save what nature chose. The soul of the river must always grow. It must run fast and amble slow. It must be bold enough to go despite the damning status quo. The soul of the river must always live. It has so much to tell and give. It must befriend both creek and lakes. It can't be bound by man's mistakes. You may have seen us gather round and pluck the trash up off the ground. Every time we walk these shores, we gather bottles by the scores. We pick up plastics as we roam in non-degradable styrofoam. We find old tires and metal cans. We fill up bags with many hands. The volunteers that join our team inspire such an awesome dream. A dream we celebrate tonight and vow to win this constant fight. Along the way, the river goes. Nearby streets add to the flows. Litter moves into the sewers and ends up on our rakes and skewers. Orange booms hold back the trash and isolate this filthy mash. Lots of energy floods the field where people power is revealed. We're doing our best to make it clean, to keep it clean and make the banks all pretty and green. With riding paths and walking trails, we're looking to add the best details. We seek to create a riverside where flowers and trees and birds abide, and even where some fishing holes invite our friends with hooks and poles. We're building an awesome coalition to bring our work to green fruition, envisioning parks and recreation, and even a litter reduction station. See yourself as a partner in this. Let's give the river a loving kiss. It can't be left for others to do. Solutions rest with me and with you. Young and old and black and white, now is the time to stand and fight. To make these Malden waters stream, let's build a dynamic neighborhood team. So come and join our robust band, reclaiming the beauty of the land. Imagine the day and take command. Together we'll make a powerful stand. Feel the fire our flame has fanned. We'll change the image of this brand. Imagine the day and place a demand. Then sink your toes in the river's sand. I'm not suggesting that this is going to be a day at the beach. That kind of leisure is not intrinsic to the modern day challenges of the Malden River. Still, very smart and highly dedicated people are part of this team. From urban planners and trained scientists to coalition builders and seasoned activists. You have leaders that know how to navigate the current bends, twists, and turns of the river. For many years, as a public affairs specialist with the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, I worked around a similar group of people. At that time, we were involved in the largest public works project in the country, the landmark cleanup of Boston Harbor. One of my specific duties was leading tours of the new wastewater treatment facility that was being built on Deer Island. From those mammoth egg-shaped sewage digesters to the undersea tunnel that carries clean effluent into the outer harbor, I got to see and be part of some historic and very cool things. Throughout my tenure with the authority, I got to see what happens when urban planners and trained scientists join coalition builders and seasoned activists to make certain that communities benefit from public works initiatives and environmental advocacy. At that time, Boston Harbor was ranked as one of the dirtiest urban harbors in the country. Today, it is ranked as one of the cleanest. The land on which the treatment plant sits was at one time a pig farm, at one time a correctional facility, and for certain, one hot mess when I first got there. By the time I left, the filth and squalor was well into becoming a much more palatable place to work, as well as to recreate, with walking trails, pretty green spaces, native flora and fauna, no pigs in sight, dramatic signage, and lots of separation between the public works and the public accommodations. Local officials and the people of Winthrop had a say in this. Environmental organizations like Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, and the Conservation Law Foundation had a say in this. Now, boating, fishing, swimming, and other forms of aquatic recreation at all of the harbor islands and public beaches is better, cleaner, and more accessible than ever before. So what does that have to do with life along the public-facing shores of the Malden River? I don't have all the answers, but I do know what happens when local people band together and ask the right questions. What happens is a clipper ship connector along the river's edge is envisioned and begins to take shape. Plans come together for a trail network, for walking and jogging and biking, for boating and access for kayaks and canoes, for the planting of native trees, shrubs, and flowers, for the conservation of local birds and wildlife, for gathering and social spaces including outdoor picnic shelters, tables, and barbecue grills, for clean spaces to relax, rest, and meditate in, for play areas targeted for children, teenagers, and the elderly, for ample trash receptacles, adequate lighting, attractive beaches, benches, directional mapping, public art, and historical, natural, and educational signage. Sound familiar? Now, am I laying down a gauntlet? Am I saying that if Medford can do it along the Mystic River, that Malden, why can't Malden do it along your river? I don't have all the answers, but I do know what happens when local people band together and ask the right questions. I do know what happens when groups like the Mystic River Watershed Association, Malden River Works, and the people of this local community act in concert to advocate for the public benefit and environmental equity. As Frederick Douglass once put it, power concedes nothing without a demand. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated, everyone has the power for greatness, not fame, but greatness, because greatness is determined by service. Are you ready to serve? Yes. Are you ready to be great? Yes. Young and old, in black and white, now is the time to stand and fight. To make these Malden waters stream, let's build a dynamic neighborhood team. So come and join our active band, reclaiming the beauty of the land. Imagine the day and take command. Together we'll make a powerful stand. Feel the fire our flame has fanned. We'll change the image of this brand. Imagine the day and place a demand, then sink your toes in the river's sand. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks so much for your kind and gracious attention. As you heard when I was introduced so graciously by Marsha, I have 4 books of poetry available over at the table, and if you're interested, come by and see me. I'll be happy to sign and sell some to you. Be great, and may your greatness bless the local friends and families of the Malden River. My wife is going to steal this. Well, thank you very much. God bless you all.
And please visit the table over there for Mr. Carter. Everyone should take a book with him.
That was fantastic. So my name is Marie Adams, and I am leading the design process for the Malden River Works project. And we're just going to switch over to another deck of slides, so I'm going to just hold on one second. And Zio, can you see over there if I switch? Do I need to say something or you can just go? Okay, all right, great. Okay, so I'm going to start by sharing our goals for what we're all going to work on tonight and then where we're headed with the work that we do tonight. So first, what I'm going to do is present 3 initial design concepts that we've been working on since the last meeting, and I'll talk about how we got there in a minute. Then we're going to talk amongst ourselves during table activities to give feedback on those design concepts, which are basically a launching point for conversation tonight. And then after tonight, our team is going to translate what we heard from all of you into a preferred design to share again at the next public meeting in April that Kathy talked about. And then we'll have one more meeting after that where we'll make refinements on that design. So I'm just going to talk first a little bit about our design process. We start by analyzing what we heard. As you heard from Marsha, we had almost 500 surveys. We also had nearly 100 people who attended the first public meeting. We've been reading through all the surveys, listening to everything that we heard during the table conversations last time, and working and reviewing what your impressions are for the Malden River and what your visions are for a new park. We've also spent time learning through tours and interviews with key stakeholders for the DPW and the boathouse in an effort to think about how we could reorganize the DPW site to make room for a new park while preserving the current boathouse uses for rowing. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second. And then also to translate what we heard and what we learned into initial design concepts for conversation tonight for a new park. So I'm going to start with some of the results from the surveys and those table conversations in October. At first, we asked some pretty simple questions in the surveys. One was just, how do people relate to the river today? Who's actually gone there, who hasn't gone there? And something that was interesting is we found about 50% of the people that we spoke to had gone to the Malden River before, and 50% hadn't. We asked those who have gone, how did they get there and what do they do when they're there? We found that about half of the people who go to the Malden River got there by car, and about half arrived by foot or on wheelchair or scooter or something like that. And then when they get there, a lot of people really like to walk on the walking trails that do exist on part of the Malden River and to enjoy nature. And so these are some of the things that we keep in mind as we're thinking about next steps. For those who haven't gone to the Malden River before, we asked why that was. And a lot of people said that they didn't even know that there was a river. Others said that there's not enough points of access and that they're not aware of where there's access or that there's not anything to do on the river. And so these are all problems that we want to start to solve with this project here tonight. We also asked in the survey what types of features or amenities people are most excited about seeing on the river. And the top responses that we got were more nature, trails for walking and jogging, benches for seating, and boating were the top responses. But you can see that there were a lot of enthusiasm around things like public art, spaces for relaxation, certain, utilitarian things like trash receptacles and gathering spaces. And then during the table activities at the public meeting and also in the open responses for the surveys, we asked questions like, what aspects of the Malden River today would you like to see preserved or enhanced? And what are the aspects of the river that you really want to see change? And so in terms of things that people want to see change, we heard loud and clear that cleaning the river is a really high priority. But we also heard that people want it to be more visible and more inviting from places like Commercial Street or the Medford Street Bridge. They see it as a potential gathering or event space where large groups of people could get together for events, concerts, outdoor movies, and that type of thing. We heard about wanting to see views across the river or better visibility of the river itself for things like racing and boating, safe access to the water for more community boating opportunities, and for nature, again. And through all of this, we started to really hear three different very strong themes come out. One, which is to enhance access and awareness to the river. So to make more people aware that there is a river and for more people to know where they can go to the river. Two, to address the trash and contamination issues. And then three, to preserve and enhance nature. So those are the three things that we're really keeping in mind as we develop initial concepts for the DPW. We can't do everything in one small parcel of land, but what we can do is set an example for the way that the river can be developed into the future and hope that others take this as a model. So at the same time, we started to learn about the DPW site. What you're seeing in front of you is an aerial photograph of the DPW on Commercial Street on the left, and then the Malden River on the right, as Kathy was showing earlier. There's three main areas associated with the DPW. One is the public works itself, so it's that large area sort of outlined in pink with its main building in the middle. The second is the boathouse area that you see in the white building on the right here in the dock along the river. And it's a tent structure, and we'll see some images of that in a second. It's used primarily for Malden High School and the Mystic Valley Charter School crew teams right now. It's not exactly open for public use. And then the third half, or the third part of the site is this wedge of land here, which it has a different landowner. And currently that's just sort of a strip of grass with some trees on it, separating the DPW from the sidewalk along Commercial Street. And just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, if you haven't been to the DPW, these are some pictures of the site. This is the main DPW building. Next, you see some of the images from the yard, or pictures that we've taken from the yard. This is them doing some street repair work, or taking materials from street repair. The road salt storage, equipment storage happens there. This is an image of the boathouse, which I said is a tent structure used for the high school rowing teams. And then here we see a dock, and this was actually a picture from September, the cruise and canoe event, which was one opportunity for the public to actually come out and use the river. We heard a lot since then that people are really excited about the opportunity to get to Malden River. There's not any public boat launches along the river right now in Malden, not too many opportunities to do this sort of thing. So in this project, we're looking for ways to really increase the opportunities for people to get to the river and use it like this. Okay. And now we're going to talk about what is happening on the DPW yard. We made this map to document all of the activities that happen there to keep the city running. This is based on what we learned from Director Bobby Knox, sitting over there, and our field visits where we went to measure, take photographs, and just observe what was happening. There's basically three main types of space in the yard. Car parking, which is mainly along the north edge of the site here for DPW employees and anyone who's visiting the site to do anything like drop off materials or go into the office for business. There's materials and equipment storage, which happens all around the perimeter of the yard. So all around the perimeter of the yard through here. You have impounded vehicles right here, material from street repair, some more parking for some of the trash contractors. You see the road salt, street sweeping debris, recycling, impounded vehicles again over here. There's also circulation space around the building. So when larger vehicles like the salt trucks come for deliveries or trucks to haul out waste, they circulate all the way around the building like this. Other vehicles come in and, let's say for fuel, go out this way. So there's a lot of truck activity that's happening around the building. There's actually also 18 garage door entrances to the building itself, so you can imagine it gets very active there at some times. And then we did a map of the ways that the DPW yard could be organized differently based on ideas from Bobby and our observations to bring safe public access from the street and to free up space by the river. And so what you're seeing here is some of those ideas. One is that they're no longer going to be having junk vehicles or impounded vehicles on the site. So the idea is that we could free up some space here and here, which is currently used for that type of storage. A big idea is that the salt will go into a covered salt storage structure in this corner here that isn't currently utilized. That then frees up some space that could be where we can move this storage or the street repair and debris over into this zone, and that this area can generally be cleaned up and creates this kind of waterfront access zone. And then something else we were looking at is there a way that we could kind of clarify the circulation on the site so that we don't have truck traffic and people that are trying to access the river kind of going through the same areas. And so that led us to one of our first ideas here, which is a new traffic strategy for the site, where we start to look at circulation, basically. And an idea of utilizing this parcel of land around the street to create a new curb cut. What this does is it creates a protected parking area that's near the front of the site here near Commercial Street. And it frees up the rest of the space for all of the DPW activities so that you kind of keep these two things separate and that the driving patterns can be a little bit more clear to visitors on the site. Then I'm going to talk about a couple of other elements that go into the framework for the new design of the DPW in order to create the space for public access to the river. So we know that trash and water quality are major issues on the river, and both can be improved through better stormwater management or green stormwater infrastructure, which is what we're showing some pictures of right here. Basically, this means using planting and soils to clean pollutants from stormwater before it reaches the river and to slow runoff from storms to reduce flooding. Most of the parcels along the Malden River right now drain directly to the river without any treatment at all. So what we want to do here at the DPW site is to set an example for what can be done throughout the river and start to clean the stormwater before it goes. There's two types of green stormwater management that we're proposing, swales and retention areas. On the left-hand picture, you can see a picture of a swale, which is basically more linear and is meant to convey stormwater to something like a retention basin, which is the image on the right, which is where plants and soils help to remove debris and filter contaminants before water goes into a waterway. Both of these are designed to drain down within a certain amount of time to prevent things like mosquito breeding. And the plans for green stormwater infrastructure are really designed to resemble and work like natural marshes or wetlands that also just naturally experience periodic flooding. So the goal is that the green infrastructure both helps with resilience and also creates opportunities to incorporate nature on the site. Another thing that we're working in relation to in this project is the Malden River Greenway Plan. So many of you might already be familiar with this plan that was spearheaded by the Mystic River Watershed Association last year, which is the idea for a continuous Malden River Greenway along the river. This project at the DPW would build the first piece of the Greenway on this part of the river, south of the Medford Street Bridge on the western side. We also see this as an opportunity to address climate resilience and flooding. We know that towards the end of the century, there's a higher probability of flooding on the Malden River from sea level rise. And while fixing the Amelia Earhart Dam is a big part of solving that problem, we can also do things locally to protect the river from flooding. And so an idea that we're looking at in this project is to think of the Mystic River Greenway as a flood-resilient greenway, and to basically use the greenway itself, or the pathway, to double purpose as a flood barrier by raising the path a few feet from the current ground level, like you see in these pictures here. So just mounting it up. and that mound can be planted with grasses. So these are the elements that make up a new framework for the DPW site. And this is a basic diagram of how all of these things go together, where you can see the new circulation route where we have truck traffic still circulating around the building as it does today, but staying separate from a parking area near the street. And then we have a system of bioswales that move stormwater that drains away from the building. All the blue arrows are water draining away from the building and takes it to a retention basin where it gets treated and eventually flows into the river. And then in terms of public access, we're trying to create a loop, a continuous loop of public access, because we know that ultimately the plan is to create a full Malden River Greenway, but today that doesn't exist. So we have to plan for this piece of the Greenway to exist without its neighbors to the north and the south. So the idea is that you create 2 points of access, one at the north side of the site and one at the south side of the site. So you can create a continuous loop from here to here. So you can come in and come back out either way. And what this does is it frees up a space right here for a new type of public amenity, and that's really going to be the focus of the conversation tonight, is to talk about what is the look, the feel, characteristics, and types of activities that you would want to see in that type of space. And so this plan here is showing this idea in the context of the whole Malden River itself, and how the basic framework that we develop at the DPW could be applied to all the other parcels along the river, with a continuous flood-resilient Malden River Greenway that would connect a series of small park-like spaces like the one that we would propose at the DPW. The basic ideas for green stormwater infrastructure around the edges of each parcel and one public access pathway from the street would apply here, which would help to clean the river by treating the runoff from all of the impervious parking lots that currently surround the river, and also create multiple points of access from the street to bring people to the river. And on that point of public access and awareness of the river that we heard from many of you in the surveys and the table discussions, we really want to think about what are ways that we can encourage people to come to the river and invite them in. And so this is an example of signage from a riverfront project in Newark, which is meant to help announce the entrance to the river from the street. And it also becomes a place for gathering. You can kind of see here in the images. So it tells you where you are, and it also becomes a way of kind of creating a sense of place. Signage along these pathways from Commercial Street to the river can also be an opportunity for storytelling. We know that there's a really deep history to the Malden River and how it's changed from a kind of once natural system to an industrial, and now it has a kind of new future. And so along these pathways from the street, there could almost be a gallery of interpretive signage that talks about that history, like the project again here in Newark, where there's an illustration of their past industrial waterfront and how that's changing to public open space today. And so this is how the plan actually looks on the site. And so I'm just going to walk through as if you're arriving to kind of use the new park. So if you're someone who's coming in, and we heard that approximately half come by car, half come by foot, you might come in, park your car in here, and you can see a new series of crosswalks to get you through here to here, and then you pick up on this public pathway. On either side you have trees, and then the bioretention swale, which would be planted with grasses that are filtering the stormwater and head towards the river. Now what you can see here is a new layout for the boathouse. You can kind of see faintly underneath in the aerial photograph. The current boathouse is sort of at an angle to the river. And when we started studying how to bring the Greenway through here and to plan for the future when we have a continuous network of Greenway, so these dashed lines are representing how the Greenway will eventually continue to the north and eventually continue to the south. What we realized is the current boathouse is really close to the water's edge, and you can't really fit a path through here. And we've also been having interview conversations with the users of the boathouse, the coaches of the rowing teams, and other individuals. And what we've heard is that there's a lot of issues with the structure as it currently stands, in the sense that it's just a fabric structure. It's actually susceptible to theft, and because it's just a tent structure. So part of the proposal would be to build a new permanent boathouse and to align it a little bit differently so we create a little more space for a pathway along the riverside here. So you can see that going through. And then we have this public amenity zone, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. And then the stormwater basin here, which would really be just a nice grass marshland planting, which is treating all the stormwater from here before it goes to the river. You could continue on your way and then you'd be up by the other bioswale through here and back to Commercial Street. And this is just representing the idea that we could have signage all along the way that sort of tells the story about the river. It could tell you what you're seeing at the DPW site, anything like that. So then, now we're going to talk about 3 initial design concepts for that public amenity space. And what I'll say is, we're basically proposing these concepts, again, as a way to start a conversation about what you want to see there. It's not really meant as a proposal for what we think it should be, but more so something that you can use to bounce ideas off of that. And based on what we've been hearing, we came up with 3 different ideas. One, which is more flexible, and so we call it the flexible concept. The second, which is a river view. And then the third, which is probably the most specific, which we're calling the enjoy nature concept. And I'll go into a little bit of detail now. All right, so this is a kind of bird's eye view of the flexible concept. And basically what we mean by that is the idea that this could be used for many different kinds of activities. And what you see here is basically a flat, open lawn. The red figures you see here are scale figures of people. The Malden River Greenway would be coming in through here. All of the different proposals have the boathouse and the idea of a new dock that would be both for rowing events but also for public access here. And in the lawn, the flat lawn could be used for many different types of activities and events. And so I'll just show some examples from projects that you might be familiar with. This is just the idea that you could use an open lawn for any type of play, sports, recreation. The lawn could be used for special events, weddings or dances, that kind of thing. It could also be used for more group exercise. This is an example of Tai Chi on a riverfront in Louisiana. Or it could be used more casually for relaxation and picnics. You could bring a blanket there, sit on the river, and relax. The second concept is called the river view concept. And in this case, we're really trying to strike a balance between a desire to be around nature, but also preserving views to the waterfront so we can see what's happening there, especially from what we've been hearing from the boating community and also comments about a performance space that have come up through the surveys and outreach. And so the idea is that you could create a sort of grass amphitheater situation here, which is facing towards the river. There could be a zone out in front that could be used for performance, and then in times when there's not a performance or an event, you could just watch what's happening on the river. And the idea is that in the future, the river itself will be a lot more activated by public boating, or if there's a regatta event or something like that, you could come to the site here and watch all of that happening. And so we just have some examples of other types of grass amphitheaters. This is a really beautiful one in Pennsylvania, which is grass with step seating, and it has a sort of a presentation space here. This is at Swarthmore College where they use it for their graduation events. This is Port Park, a project that I worked on in Chelsea, where you have this kind of elevated structure here that is sometimes used for performances, but at other times can be used as an overlook at the water, and then you get the grassy amphitheater behind here. And then this is a nearby example from Assembly Square, where you have a kind of larger flat lawn area and then some step seating so that you can have performances and events near the riverfront as well. And then the third concept is the one that is most specific in the sense that it has less kind of space for gathering in larger groups. It's really a little bit more for individuals and smaller groups to circulate through the site, go walking or jogging on the trail, and to be close to nature. So the idea is basically that you bring the river into the site. by kind of carving away at the shoreline here. And you really use this space to kind of create a new marshland zone with a boardwalk that walks out into it so that you could walk out over the water and through all of the plants and really be surrounded by the river ecosystem. And a lot of this kind of draws from some ideas about resilience for flooding. There's a concept called, which a lot of you are probably familiar with, room for the river. The idea that over time, as the Malden River has become industrialized, it has really been straightened, channelized, and actually a lot of space has been taken away from it. So if you see here, this is the train line. I'm going to draw your attention to it. This is the orange line. This is the Northern Strand Trail here. And this is the DPW site with the red here. So this is what the Malden River looks like today. And then back in 1878, you can see how it used to have this meander to it. There used to be all of the space between those two train lines was given to the river, or was naturally part of the river, whereas today it's really just this very skinny, straight, narrow thing. So even though this is a very small gesture in the enjoy nature concept, the idea is that we could start incrementally to get back to a river that's more like this, to give more room for it to flood and to behave like a river. And so some images of what that could look like. This is in West Stockbridge, Massachusetts. It's a boardwalk that's going over a similar kind of marshland landscape so that you can really get close to the water and look at fish, look at the plants. An example from River's Edge, very close by, and just the idea that you could also have a trail that's under the tree canopy, and then benches placed within the trees as well. Okay, and so that's an overview of the three concepts. We're going to then open it up to conversation, and Ramon is going to introduce that. But before we start, I can take any questions that you have about these concepts, about the site, the process, or anything at all. And do we have a microphone? Sorry, just one second. Do we have a microphone we can take over there?
No, I can. I just have a question. So
Sure.
out of these three designs, which one do you anticipate to be the most expensive?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we don't know yet. I would say I have a hunch that the one that would probably be the hardest to permit and potentially most expensive is the enjoy nature concept, because it involves work in the water, and typically that can be more expensive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, are there any other questions? Yes.
For all of these designs, what's the parking capacity? How many people can drive there and enjoy it?
Yeah, that is a good question. And so right now what we have is 65 parking spaces on the site in total. Most of the time those will be used by DPW employees. What we anticipate is that the times that the park gets the most use is probably not the same times that the DPW is going to be the busiest. They're the busiest in the summertime during working hours. And so on the weekends when there's a little bit less activity at the DPW, but maybe more of a desire to use the park, you'd have more parking spaces. But I would say, like, in total, there's probably at any time between all of your employees and open spaces, like 6 or 7 parking spots. And then that fluctuates depending on time of day, time of week. Does that seem about? Okay. Yeah. Plenty of parking off hours. Yeah.
Also, not just private property, what about public transportation? About getting a bus route down to Commercial Street?
Yeah, would anyone like to talk? I know this was studied in some of the recent planning, like the commercial corridor plan. I don't know if anybody, the question was about getting a bus route along Commercial Street to bring public transportation closer to the site.
I believe the bus route was changed to Commercial Street.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, hold it. If you have a question, let me bring the mic so that other people can hear your question.
You reflected upon the neighbors to the north and the south. Could you make a comment about who they are and what their intentions are in the future?
We know that the property owner to the north and the south are actually the it's the same property owner, which is a good thing in some ways because it's just one group of people we need to talk to. And we are starting those conversations. We don't know their future plans yet, but we do plan to engage them in this process.
Is there a zoning concept in that regards that they could build?
There is not a zoning concept yet, but I believe that is something that is being considered right now in the city.
So
But hold the phone, use the mic, please.
So potentially, whatever we build can expand north and south?
That would be the ideal situation. What we're trying to do is create a model that is replicable in other parcels. And there are a lot of similarities between just how the DPW site is organized, not really how it works, because it's the only one that is sort of a very active industrial yard. But most of the parcels along the river are really similar in the sense that they have a pretty big building in the middle surrounded by parking. And all of those concepts we're doing here really apply to those types of parcels.
So does that mean that they could build? So does that mean that they could build on those parcels adjacent to the DPW for that zoning? I'm not sure what the zoning is.
Yeah, the idea is that what we would show here is compatible with other properties that are similar. And so depending on whether a property owner actually has the space and desire to make a public park space or the situation leads to that, that's one piece of it. Otherwise, the idea is just that there would be a continuous greenway that links together all of the parcels along the riverfront.